I don't think that.
America first. I want to put America first. Is that racism, or is it an appeal to a visceral need in the American public, or a substantial plurality of it, to have their concerns taken seriously? This attitude of, oh my God, what's happening to us? Our country is being hijacked by this bad man, strikes me as both historically inaccurate, but more to the point, as a deficient electoral strategy.
I think that history is going to be perplexed. It will take smart historians, all these people coming out of that administration and talking about the gorilla who was in office. Yes, gorilla. And the fact that he won, let's say that he wins, that he had this fan base. And part of it is a quirk of the Electoral College. He's not going to win the popular vote. But the fact that he got back in, and that there were many people who were extremely happy that he did, of all stripes. It's going to take a smart doctoral candidate to figure out how that was. That's going to be something people cut their teeth on. But now we're living through it.
I think there's just as big a prospect that he will be viewed, should he be re-elected to the White House, as a historic figure with warts, certainly with flaws, who changed the direction of the country and did so in the face of implacable opposition and reshaped the political sensibilities of the country in ways that we cannot fully comprehend now. How about taking on as a project? Let's do a deep dive in trying to understand where the support for Trump in so many corners of American society that has catapulted him into a second visit to the White House comes from.
The way you just said it grammatically made it sound like it had actually happened. And I must admit, my stomach jumped. You said has catapulted him back to the White House. That felt like you were saying.
Yeah, I should have said will have catapulted him.
Ooh.
Hello, everybody. This is Glenn Loury. You've tuned into The Glenn Show with John McWhorter. There's John. Hey, John, how you doing?
Hey, Glenn, how are you?
I've been better. I don't know. My mood is a little low today. I'm not sure what it is. I didn't sleep so well last night. And I don't know. Maybe it's a pending sense of doom that has overtaken me 2 days before the presidential election of 2024 comes to a conclusion. It's been going on for some time. I don't know, but I'm Glenn Loury. I teach at Brown University. I'm John Paulson's senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. And I'm joined by my regular conversation partner, John McWhorter, who teaches at Columbia University and writes regularly for the New York Times. So we are here 2 days before the election. John, do you have a sense of foreboding about the pending outcome?
Yes, but in part because it's not going to be over Tuesday or Wednesday. It's going to be a nail biter. It's going to be close, and Trump is going to refuse to concede if it looks like it's going against him, and so it's going to be unpleasant, and it's going to be extended. Nothing's going to end on Tuesday night. And so there's that, just what the mess of that process is going to be. And with, once again, sane people insisting that the election has been stolen, and what to do with that argument. And also just the fact that we can't know that it's this close. And, I think, that I at least would much prefer that Kamala
Do you
Harris
think the Democrats would accept with equanimity the outcome of the election were it to go against them in a close call where there were some questions about whether or not everything had been properly conducted?
I don't think that the Democrats would be against, insisting on, checking out certain things or recounting certain things to an extent. But never would there be the sense that we simply must have won. And if it looks like we didn't, then there must have been some kind of chicanery. Yeah, I think that Kamala Harris would behave more or less the way Al Gore did, despite the fact that, from what I've seen, when you really do the final accounts of that election, Gore squeaked by. He technically won, but you get over that. Yeah, I think that Kamala Harris would be of the same frame of mind, and all of the people behind her. So,
you're sure it's going to be close? I mean, the straws in the wind that I see suggest Trump has a chance of actually winning by a substantial margin.
Yeah, that's what you hear, every other day or something. And, there are things that we really simply cannot know because of the imperfection of polling. Polling is just so often unrepresentative of the populace, who's actually going to vote, who's not going to. But yeah, he could win. Yeah, there's no question that he could end up being president again.
Now, you're a guy who famously has said that, in so many words, Trump is an existential threat to American democracy. You have said, I don't want to dwell on this, but that even in your darkest hour, you've harbored the thought that, the country would be better off if he were not around. Uh, you know, you have basically endorsed the lawfare strategy of the Democrats that, anything that, what you saw, tie his shoelaces together, is anything to slow him down or humbled him, whether it's Alvin Bragg making up, so to speak, this or that, a felonious charge against Trump and then getting a jury to go along with him or whatever, because keeping him out of office is the most important thing. I hope not to have mischaracterized you in that prelude to
No,
the question. And the question is, now that we are on the precipice or the threshold of a circumstance in which Trump's return to the White House would be endorsed by an electoral college majority. It's not certain that could happen, but it could happen. We all acknowledge it could happen. We'll find out, maybe not on Tuesday night, but soon enough. What say you about your country and about the future of our democratic processes, that your ironclad sensibility, and you're not alone in this, not at all, will have been, if this were to come to pass, refuted by the voters?
I would say I still believe that that would be a very unfortunate occurrence. It would constitute an ongoing national emergency for 4 years. I remain with the conviction that that person has no business anywhere near such an important public office. And I remain perplexed, genuinely perplexed, at how many people feel otherwise, because I simply haven't heard the arguments beyond the idea that he would be reined in by his handlers, which this time he wouldn't, or that he's just talking and there's really no reason to think that he is. It would be a problem. Now, here's something: the end of our democracy, that to me sounds more like a song than a reality. From what I can see, I'm not, I have no gift at predicting, but from what I can see, the person after him would not be like him. If it was another Republican, it would be someone who is an actual grown up. If it were even J.D. Vance, J.D. Vance is a clear minded and intelligent person.
Why do you say even?
Remind me where I said even.
Well, you just did. You said even if it were J.D.
Oh,
Vance.
well, I think J.D. Vance is a serious phony. I mean, pretending to agree with Trump about the election because he has to because of his position, the way he felt about Trump 10 minutes ago versus what he's doing now, it's callow opportunism. I'm appalled. However, I don't think that he is a clueless idiot. I think that he would be a grown up in charge. And so, that would not be the end of democracy. J.D. Vance as president would not be the end of democracy. It would just be somebody I wouldn't prefer.
I have a
But
couple of. Excuse me. I
and I
didn't mean
just
to
also
interrupt you.
and I just wanted to say, maybe the Democrats will come up with a secret bullet, in which case, we'd be fine at some point in the future. But the main problem would be the 4 years that he had a second term, because terrible things could happen. Things that really, I hate to sound corny, aren't what this country is supposed to be about. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask about whether you would be inclined to rethink anything, to reckon that you might have been wrong about something, and more broadly, whether the Democrats would be inclined to read in the tea leaves any repudiation of themselves. This is not just about Trump. There are two parties contending here. Whether should this come to pass and Orange Man Bad return to the White House as the 47th president of the United States, whether there isn't any profound lesson to be learned for the Democrats about the failures of how it is that they're approaching the American electorate. For example, has wokeness had too big a sway on them? Did their casual attitude toward protecting the country from an invasion of unauthorized entrants cost them an election? Is the contempt that's shown for the people who actually support Trump, and that was evidenced by the most recent faux pas where the President Biden, it was heard to say something about Trump supporters being garbage. He walks it back, but
And
there it
Glenn,
is.
I want to say very quickly that he certainly did call them garbage. There's been all of the business of the supposed apostrophe that's in there. The only garbage is that of his support. That is not what he meant if you listen to the intonation. So yes, that was a horrible gaffe. Go ahead. Or a horrible
Yeah,
thing to
but
say.
it's emblematic of what he actually thinks, and more
Yes, it
broadly of
is.
what the party actually thinks, and perhaps even
Yes,
what
it
you
is.
think.
Frankly, I'm perplexed by the depth and the fervor of his support. I genuinely would not say, however, that it makes the people garbage. I don't think that.
America first. Okay. I want to put America first. Is that racism? Or is it a appeal to a visceral need in the American public, and a majority of the American public, or a substantial plurality of it, to have their concerns taken seriously, and so on? I mean, this attitude that oh my God, what's happening to us? Our country is being hijacked by this bad man. Strikes me as both historically inaccurate, but more to the point as a deficient electoral strategy. And
Well, the America First business with, the tinge of racism, let's say that was Pat Buchanan. If Pat Buchanan were about to become president, that wouldn't be my favorite thing, but I would completely understand that the America First idea would appeal reasonably to voters depending on what their life situation was, or even just because of a certain America First streak. Frankly, I remember I never quite understood why we were so committed to Yugoslavia, as it used to be called. I remember back then thinking, why that as opposed to so many things that we could be doing here at home? And I know there were larger issues to be concerned with, but I get America First. But with Trump, the issue is, and I don't think anyone needs to be told this, but we're talking about a Pat Buchanan who would also attempt mass deportations of people for reasons, most of which, to me at least, make no sense, who promises that he's going to, go against his enemies, including the ones in the media, making life difficult for people just because he's angry at them. This is somebody who talks about the people he wants to deport, also Democrats in general, as we're the problem within. We're the enemy within. So the immigrants are vermin. But then there's this enemy within that's out to get him. That is basically destroying our country. That's the way a president feels coming in, and then also getting himself pardons, and then also, and this would not be Pat Buchanan, cozying up to dictators in places like North Korea and Russia, and depending on how you want to call China. But really, Trump likes those people's style.
These are Democratic Party talking points, John.
No, but
I'm
Glenn,
shocked at your lack of imagination.
No, these are things that he said and done.
Cozying up to dictators? Come on, man.
Isn't that an objective statement? Look at he loves Putin's style.
It's an extremely pejorative characterization of developing a relationship with foreign leaders. Cozying up to dictators? He wants to talk to Putin? That's cozying up to a dictator?
He's praised Viktor Orban in Hungary.
But I'm surprised. I'm surprised at you, John.
Viktor Orban in Hungary?
He's the president of Hungary.
Praises him. He approves of somebody who a great many Europeans
What about Narendra Modi of India?
A scourge. I've never heard him say anything about Modi, but to tell you the truth, I'll bet that many of the things that at least I would wish Modi had not done or said are things where Trump would think, no, he's taking care of business. He's a good, strong man. And I don't feel like I'm expressing opinion here. I'm just talking about things that Trump has said and done, which I find incommensurate with somebody who's going to be the president of the United States.
Someone who has been the president of the United States for 4 years, and none of the awful consequences that you intimate came to pass during that time, although he was buddies with the guy who runs North Korea, and he was willing to talk with Putin in ways that people thought was inappropriate and so on.
Yeah, but then he had...
This guy didn't fall.
But he had people holding him back, whereas this time he's going to have people who are all for him. He's not going to make that mistake again. Not to mention...
Again, it's a failed talking point that you're uttering here in an election that, should your worst fears come to pass, it will have been shown not to be effective.
But the thing is, I'll give you this. He's so disorganized and so inwardly focused that I don't think he would be capable of focusing on all of his talking points and actually getting all of them done from A to B to C. That soothes me a little bit. Nevertheless, if he said he's going to do these things, if he's presented himself as having those intentions, you know, I would feel that you're not supposed to put him in the White House. No,
No, I don't agree
no.
with that.
And notice
Uh,
I'm not saying that he's in Russia's pocket or anything like that. I find all of that a little dramatic. But it's just his idea that he's looking at what Vladimir Putin does and admiring it. I don't get it.
you can
I, I,
see
I can't
Kamala
support
Harris
that.
across the table from Vladimir Putin effectively dealing with him. I
Oh,
can't.
no. There's only so much there. But I hate to say it. It now is considered highly irritating to say it. Anything but him. She'll at least run the store.
Ground News is the website and app that I use to stay fully informed and understand the media landscape. They gather articles from over 50,000 news sources around the world and help you break free from big tech algorithms and echo chambers. Go to ground.news/Glenn Show to see how it works. My favorite Ground News feature is the blind spot feed. It shows you stories that are disproportionately reported by either the left or the right. Here's something you will only read in right-wing sources. Somali leaders in Minnesota endorse Trump for president. And here's a headline from the left-wing informational bubble. Trump muses about reporters being shot and says he shouldn't have left White House in 2020. For every story, Ground News gives you a breakdown of how many news sources covered it, their bias distribution across the left, center, and right, how reliable these sources have been in the past, and who owns them. You can't get this type of news analysis anywhere else. I also enjoy using the My News Bias feature, which shows you your own bias. My listeners who subscribe through my link will get 50% off the unlimited access Vantage plan. This is their best deal of the year, and it will only be available for a limited time. If you're already a subscriber, you can send the Ground News as a gift to family or friends for 50% off. So make sure you use my link at ground.news/Glenn Show. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code. Again, that's ground.news/Glenn Show. I hope you will join me in supporting an independent platform trying to bring facts, transparency, and trust back to the news.
Okay, let's talk about the Obamas who could come out big losers in this election should it go the way that you fear. What did you make of their last minute appeal to African American men and others, the cajoling from the president, former President Obama in Pittsburgh when he was speaking to Kamala Harris's effect, and the hectoring and lecturing coming from Michelle Obama? I don't know where she was when, maybe Pennsylvania, when she gave her, maybe it wasn't Pennsylvania, wherever it was, when she gave her impassioned speech to Black men to, man up.
Uh-huh. They're now too protected through no fault of their own. They don't get out enough. It's interesting. You can just tell that they can't get out enough being who they are. And they're caught at a time in history when there's this historical shift in what the Black vote is coming to mean. It's going to become a little 2006 to be running around saying, Black people only vote Democratic, the Democratic plantation. It's changing. And it's easy to think that this Republican shift among especially Black men, especially Black men without college degrees, but a lot who have it, is some kind of accident. But really, I think it's just that they're thinking for themselves. It's easy, though, to see it must be sexism they're thinking because, as you get older, and by older, I mean my age, I'm basically their age, it's easy to kind of stop seeing change. And I think, what this reminds me of, Glenn, actually, and I'm going to say this, and, Shelby Steele is the reason that you and I are sitting here talking, but I remember watching him make a grievous mistake when Obama was first coming along. And poor Shelby wrote a whole book, claiming in the title that Obama couldn't win. And then Obama took Iowa the week the book was published. And that book now is unfortunately just this obsolete mistake because Shelby genuinely thought that Obama was not going to win because he thought the black electorate would only be interested in firebrands like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. And people weren't going to see Obama as black enough. He wasn't angry enough and he couldn't win. And I remember thinking at the time, no, there are other ways of seeming black enough than acting like Jesse Jackson. And I could tell that he was going to win, especially because educated white people liked him so much. That's this here. To see these black men and think, well, it must partly be sexism, because why in the world would they not be voting for her otherwise, is not to understand that a lot of those men really do respond to aspects of Trump, such as the opposition to immigrants, such as the whole strong man routine, the towel snapping way of talking, the projection of strength. I've known some. There's some in my family. There is not actually black, but Latino, a friend of mine here in my neighborhood. I've listened to, these are sane people who are just looking at Kamala and the Donald as individuals and choosing. And I don't think that the Obamas quite get that. And I think it's partly because there's only so much they can get around these days. And so, yeah, it came off as very condescending. I'll bet they're mystified as to why anybody would think that. But they were talking to those men as if it was 2004. I don't think that it's significantly sexism. Not that there's none of that there, but I would say not enough to matter. They actually like him. I wish they didn't, personally, but they do. And not because they're insane. I will not call them deranged the way certain people call me for not liking Trump. It's they're making a different choice.
I thought they came off as insufferably arrogant. I thought, oh, they deign to come down from Olympus and instruct the plebes about how to behave politically in their wisdom, in their royal status. I thought they thought that they represent and stand for something which ought to have had more impact on the behavior of black people than, in fact, I reckon it will have had. I thought, oh, I see. Well, let me not go on because I will.
Something has always really
for myself.
Something has always really bothered you about that man in particular. Obama rubs you the wrong way. Is it because
$500,000 for a speech? A compound on Martha's Vineyard and a Colorama mansion in D.C. and whatnot. This is what that movement was about? Glad handing around the world with uber rich and super celebrities and whatnot.
What is it that you would want him to be doing instead?
Doing what
That's a genuine question.
Doing what Jimmy Carter is doing.
I see. Oh, okay.
Being an embodiment of a humanitarian commitment and a sense of trying to make the world a better place.
And in a more hands-on way than this kind of Davos sort of existence.
I mean, come on, I'm completely out of touch with reality by saying these things because, of course, he's not going to do those things. And besides, who wants to be Jimmy Carter, the failed president who putters around in Habitat for Humanity and other such?
But then again, that's a real hands-on way.
Vouchsafing electoral security and unstable nascent democracies around the world.
And supporting the curing of diseases that we don't have to think about much here in the United States.
And writing books with titles like Israel, Peace, Not Apartheid. Palestine, Peace, Not Apartheid. I think that's the title of that book.
I think you find Obama kind of slick. And frankly, he is. And I would certainly say that he has not been nearly as impactful on the culture as I thought he would back in the day. Although I think that the two of them represent a kind of a normalization of Black success, which is a healthy thing in our culture. But you wouldn't, if you were in a class with him, you wouldn't like him. You think he's a little cocky, a little bit of the FDR chin in the air, a little fake, more a celebrity rather than a deep thinker, something like that. Am I putting words into your mouth?
No, you're gesturing in the direction. You'll hit the spot eventually if you keep at
it. But no, that was not one of Obama's greatest moments. Like you can't stand that. If I had a son, he would look like Trayvon. I never understood what was so wrong with that. But no, rolling up his shirt sleeves and telling, the brothers, quote unquote, don't hesitate
It
to
was
vote for a
exactly what the
woman.
country didn't need. The country didn't need to hear that from him. The country needed to hear from him that we're a country of laws and we respect what the courts do. And I know he said these things. And that this is not an emblematic instance characteristic of the circumstances of African Americans in this country. As the civil disturbances unfolded in the aftermath of that and similar incidents, he might have taken a sterner stand in defense of law, order, and normalcy instead of giving backhanded support and credence to the outsized and historically inaccurate claims of the Black Lives Matter types. I thought and think, what's the point of having a black president if he doesn't put Sister Soldier and her ilk in her place?
He was not inclined to do that. One Sister Soldier, that's becoming an antique reference, but that was an important inflection point, and I thought it was very good. It was very good politics. One thing that, and this is baby talk, but I'm sure a lot of writers are thinking this. If Trump gets in, 4 years, we have to write about how we feel about the stuff that he does. Every week he's going to do something or say something appalling, and that's going to be in the news cycle. And, there comes a time when you have to say something. I have some weeks where I realize I would like to write about George Gershwin, but I have to write about something that, he said or some phenomenon. And another 4 years of that. And that's what it was like from 2016 to 2020. I would so much rather that our discussion, not only what I write about, but our national discussion be about the sorts of things that Kamala Harris would halfway get done, because they are what I think of as progressive.
Your enthusiasm, I can't share it with you, but I hear you. I hear you about how our lives will be shaped by the outcome of this election. I hear you about that.
And I'm not enthusiastic about.
How about this, John? How about taking on as a project? Let's do a deep dive in trying to understand where the support for Trump in so many corners of American society that has catapulted him into a second visit to the White House comes from. How about trying to understand it in a more full-throated way?
The way you just said it grammatically made it sound like it had actually happened, and I must admit, my stomach jumped. You said has catapulted him back to the White House. That felt like you were saying.
Yeah, I should have said will have catapulted him.
Ooh, damn. Anyway, go ahead.
No, that's pretty much it. The idea would be a series of interviews with people, maybe even site visits and conversations and whatnot, in which you try to get your head around, how did this happen?
I feel like I kind of know. I mean, isn't that, frankly, the endless news story at this point, day after day after day, getting into the mind of the Trump voter? A lot of it is an issue of what you prioritize. Nobody thinks the man is any kind of moral paragon, but the idea is better than Kamala, or I care about the economy, and there's the idea that the economy was better under him. So, many people aren't interested in politics.
What I mean is things like the border and the composition of the country, and why, people are not racist for wanting to know who it is that's going to be joining their polity and having some say over that. What about the climate enthusiasm amongst the Democrats and the fact that has a hit on the working class and union and industrial dependent economy and employment in ways that if you live on the coast and you're imbibing the atmosphere of the Democratic Party elite, you saving the planet becomes more important than saving the job. What about this transgender thing where, a Supreme Court nominee, I'm talking about Ketanji Brown Jackson, can't define what a woman is in public without running afoul of no offense to her. I'm seeing she's a victim in a way of the political climate. She couldn't define it because if she were to define it, XY chromosome or whatever, she would have been in trouble with, what about that?
All of that makes sense. I mean, what perplexes me is that, what you're talking about is the all I know is kind of vote. All I know is, a person will say. And there's this one thing, I think, when you're more educated, often you say that it's your wedge issue. I get that. I get those issues. You feel that, you've been priced out of a job because of immigration, or that immigration makes it harder for you to do your job. I get that. What perplexes me is that because of the things that he's promised to do, all of them, especially that roughly half dozen that I gave, I would think that most people would say, I'm with him on X, but given all this other stuff, and then also the fact that he's inattentive and incurious and, never took the office seriously, I think that they would think, not him. This is a special case, not him. But they don't think that. So maybe you're saying I would want to get rid of my perplexity. I'm afraid most human beings, no, but the problem is, what I'm going to say is that, not all people vote in an informed way. Most people don't, and that's quite natural and quite understandable. But there are people who are voting in an informed way who nevertheless think that Trump would be the better choice than Kamala Harris. And they're maybe even great fans of Trump. That does perplex me. It would be interesting to dig into this. Like, for example, the blowback that I took here for despising Trump. That was for the most part, from what I could see, thoroughly well-read people who are watching this and, educated, et cetera, and, are steamed, furious, just, off the rails that I would talk about Trump in that way. I must admit that perplexes me. I'm surprised that their feelings run that deep about it, and that they are so incomprehending of mine. Yeah, it would be interesting to get underneath, especially the fans of Trump of that world, to
Well,
be
people are
the
saying
informed Trump voter.
people are saying you're informed Trump voter that he didn't do such a bad job when he was president. That the country was actually doing pretty well until the COVID pandemic hit. Foreign relations issues were breaking our way, more or less, notwithstanding the claim that he had sold out to Vladimir Putin, and that he was, I have a good friend that called him a traitor. Trump is a traitor. He should be impeached because he's a traitor to his things of this kind. And they sensed that his administration was a relatively successful one, especially in comparison to his successor, as well as the over the top exaggerations, distortions, and lies that were perpetrated against him. He said that there were good people on both sides of the racism debate in Charlottesville when he didn't say any such thing, and all that kind of stuff. And the near universal antipathy to him in the legacy media, which, I think has redounded at the end of the day to discredit of the reputation of the media. Not so much of Trump. So there's a kind of, looking in the mirror imperative, it seems to me, in the event that Trump should win this election, that Democrats should be willing to undertake.
Yeah. Should. Yes. Will they? I don't know. But I still remain impacted by the sorts of things that people who worked in that administration and no longer do say. And it would seem to me that to think that things weren't really that bad then, and then to listen to these people saying, what it took to keep things from being really that bad, and to compare it to the Biden presidency when he had to deal with a raging pandemic at first. The inauguration with the outdoor masking, et cetera. It was quite a time to become president. I think that history is going to be perplexed. It will take smart historians to look at the sorts of things that, Milley, for example, says. All these people coming out of that administration and talking about the gorilla who was in office. Yes, gorilla. And the fact that he won, let's say that he wins, that he had this fan base. And part of it is a quirk of the Electoral College. He's not going to win the popular vote. But the fact that he got back in, and that there were many people who were extremely happy that he did, of all stripes. And a lot of them were brown. It's going to take a smart doctoral candidate to figure out how that was. That's going to be something people cut their teeth on. But now we're living through it.
I think there's just as big a prospect that he will be viewed, should he be re-elected to the White House, as a historic figure with warts, certainly with flaws. who changed the direction of the country and did so in the face of implacable opposition and reshaped the political sensibility of the country in ways that we cannot fully comprehend now. But the end of wokeness, the repudiation of a certain drift leftward in American political sensibilities along a number of different issue dimensions, I think will be the signature sort of bottom line on it.
Yeah, it's funny. I think of him as one of the sparks for wokeness going too far. A lot of that performative peak wokeness was stimulated by a desire to define yourself against him and a sense that his presence was a general emergency, which, yes, at the time could be exaggerated. And then there was a backlash against that wokeness, which was during the Biden administration when certain people started writing certain kinds of books. Although, no, I'm getting the dates wrong. Because, for example, I started writing woke racism. I wrote that under the final months of Trump. But still, the pushback continued under Biden. But what you're saying, Glenn, and this is an interesting historical possibility. Like I just read George Will's biography of Ronald Reagan. And of course, people talked about Ronald Reagan almost the way people are talking about Trump now.
Correct.
I remember it well. I was practically a grown up at the time. He was just considered the evil enemy. And George Will's book, you can tell Will doesn't like the man. He doesn't despise him, but Will finds Reagan extremely unimpressive in a great many ways. But there's an elegiac quality to the book. And we can now look at Reagan as somebody who he was a genuine leader in his way, and he changed an era with his leadership, even if it was kind of performative, but then leadership has to be to an extent.
Yeah.
You're saying that in 40 years, there could be a book about Trump with his face on the front of it, looking presidential, and it's treating him with respect, not as some kind of baboonish, I'm going to stop with the simian references, not as some kind of aberration that thank God we got through, but as somebody who needs to be looked at in a new way. You think they're going to be revisionist histories of Trump?
Yeah. I do.
I'm incapable of imagining it, but sometimes I lack imagination.
Well, this is a man who has dominated American politics for a decade. He comes from, in effect, nowhere. He comes down an escalator. He's an entertainer and a businessman. He's universally despised by the elites who matter. And in the face of withering, unrelenting opposition, derogation, denigration, and one after another, both metaphorically and literally, to assassinate him, impeached twice, Russiagate, the collusion hoax, the suppression of that laptop story, the lawfare stuff. I mean, how many indictments, how many efforts to try to peremptorily disqualify him? End runs around the voters, a demonization of one kind after another, and then nevertheless prevails and becomes the second president in the history of the country to be twice elected independently, not successively, to the office, completely changed the Republican Party, remade the party in his image, etc. How's that not historic? How's that not something that would warrant and deserve the most careful and serious, sustained scrutiny to come to terms with what it means about our country? Because at the end of the day, that's what I think the issue is. The issue is us, not him. It's us.
He's had a major impact. That's true. It's unclear to me a single positive feature of that impact. And of course, people will differ in what they consider positive and negative to be. Yes, he's transformed the Republican Party. He's flushed it down the toilet. He's made it into a cult of personality, united around a kind of facile xenophobia and a comfort with mendacity that goes beyond anything that we saw in either the Nixon or Reagan administrations. And I know this, I'm not saying anything new, but I think those things are facts. I just can't see how we would go to about Trump. I can't see that we're going to look back and think that he did something good.
What do you think Elon Musk is up to? Is he an idiot? Is he in the sway of a cult of personality? Is he an opportunist? Or is he a patriot who thinks he knows what's better, not best, better? I mean, there are alternatives here. Kamala Harris is another alternative. The Democratic establishment, Obama 2.0 is another alternative, better for our country.
I think Elon Musk is a professional contrarian. I think he likes poking his finger in people's eyes. And I think that's part of his fondness of Donald Trump. And actually, I would put that there, because for example, to be on X, why did he have to rename it that? That's the sort of thing I mean. But to be on X is to see that he forces himself into your feed, whether you want him there or not. And so I see a lot of him every day, and it would seem to me that he likes being the bad boy. Do I think that he genuinely agrees with a significant number of the policies that Trump has put forward? I don't see that as much as I see a glee in getting on people's nerves. That's my sense of him. That seems to trivialize him, but that's what I see from his tweets. There may be more to him. I haven't read a book about him and I don't follow him closely, but that's my sense of it.
Yeah. I saw your recent column, Trump is bored.
Mm-hmm.
What was that about?
Well, it just means that I don't think that he's demented. So there's somewhere where I'm departing from the MSNBC orthodoxy. I don't see evidence of cognitive decline in him. I find him utterly, sometimes almost fascinatingly ordinary. And I think that the reason that he's doing things that seem a little crazy lately is just because you want to turn up the volume in order to maintain how interesting you were, X minutes ago. You have to do some new stuff. And I think that he's bored of campaigning, which he all but openly says that he is. And so was it yesterday or the day before that he actually mimed giving a microphone fellatio? He actually stood up and did that. That wasn't an old man losing it or, an old man, flashing the audience or something like that. That was somebody.
Literally, he was making love to the microphone?
He was making a little joke.
It was a joke.
Like right out of porn. I'm not going to do it, but he actually.
No, don't do it, John. And I'm definitely not going to do it.
I'm going to keep my head still, but he made it look like, he did that. You can see it. Okay, that's unprecedented for somebody running for president, but it's certainly, a lot of his stuff has gotten old. How many names can you call Kamala Harris? And so he's going to do something like that. And I compare all of this to how a lot of language change works, where you go bigger. You go bigger in order to keep your interlocutor's attention and to keep your speech fresh. If you say by means of instead of just through or by, part of the reason you use too many words is because you're trying to get attention. You're trying to throw up a flare. And there are all sorts of things that work that way, probably better expressed in writing. Humor, though, is one of those things. And, when Trump and he says, I don't want to answer questions, and then he starts swaying. There's the weirdest moment where 40 minutes he has everybody just listening to his Spotify list. And I found it interesting first. I had never seen him respond to any kind of art before. He was moving his body to the music. I used to say I've never seen him tap his foot. That was a side of him I have never seen, that there are actually songs that he enjoys. I thought he was one of those non-musical people, but apparently he likes some songs. And he just stands there 40 minutes, and that's not somebody going crazy. He was just bored. That was more interesting than answering the same old questions and doing his same old routines. And so I was just saying, I don't think he's demented. And the kicker, to the extent that you have to have a kicker in these pieces, is I said that means I don't think he's going to go into office and really start losing it. And J.D. Vance is basically the shadow president, which is what a lot of people I know say they hope will happen. If he's demented, then he's not going to be that bad and a grown-up will take over. No, I don't think he's demented. I think he's sharp as a tack. And he'll get into office and keep doing exactly what he wants to do in all lucidity, which is a prospect that I, of course, dread.
Endorsement gate. the Post, the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times declined to endorse a candidate. A lot of people got upset about it. Some people resigned their affiliations with those institutions in virtue of their disgust at the tepid engagement with their election of those news organizations. And the defense of the position was Bezos said this explicitly, interested in maintaining our journalistic integrity, and we don't want to fuel the sense of perception that we report the news through a biased lens. And,
And why does that all of a sudden come now, and not just in the Post, but in the Los Angeles Times? And I think it's obvious that both Bezos and Xiong are worried about what a Trump might do to them if elected, which is reason number 807 why there's something unprecedented about the possibility of this man being in the office again. They're that afraid, and they made serious moves that deeply alienated a lot of people, including people paying to read those papers, because of that feeling. That's not nothing. And so I look at that and I think, wow, this is new. There's a real problem here.
But it's not new. It used to be the policy of the Washington Post until it wasn't anymore.
Decades ago. But the reason that they're changing it up now instead of 4 years from now, or 8 years ago, there's a reason. And it's well, not 8 years ago, but let's say 4. There's a reason. And it makes it clear what a scare this man, in his transformation of the Republican Party, for example, puts into people. It's not based on philosophy. It's based on terror. It's just like peak woke, where people pretend to believe things because they're afraid of losing their job. Same thing here. They are in terror of what this person could do for them. That's not what I think of as progress. Do you think I'm getting that wrong?
Yeah, I think it's wrong. I mean, I think it's the least generous interpretation that you could offer. And I think the cover story, which is we don't endorse, is because we find that to be inconsistent with what our mission is as a unbiased source of reportage about American politics, is plausible.
I'll go for that, but not this year. It's kind of like, let's get rid of the SAT because it's not representative, etc. And the real reason is, let's not submit Black kids to a standardized test. I say get rid of the SAT after you've taught Black kids how to represent themselves properly on it. Here too. Okay, newspapers making endorsements. I always found it a little fake, but a little theatrical. But wow, this year, 2 of them independently. These are troubled times. So it's the timing that I find suspicious. That's all.
What are you going to be doing in election night? Watching returns or anything?
Well, the thing is, the truth is, we're not going to see anything happen on Tuesday night. But I am pretty sure that I am going to be at a kind of a press party with the Free Press, and my job is to drop in for a while. But I think that really it's just going to be saying it's not over. And really, we're talking about roughly election week. What are you going to be doing?
Sitting with my wife in the TV room, watching a sitcom and channel switching back to CNN or whatever every now and then to see where things stand.
What sitcom? I need a fresh one these days.
Frasier reruns.
The old Frasier.
The old Frasier. Yeah, the old Frasier.
That was a slick little show.
That's one of the things that we watch. We got a bunch of them. 2.5 Men reruns, going way back. This is.
I don't know if I ever saw an episode. I saw one. Yeah. Okay.
Charlie Sheen.
Yeah.
Company.
When he was going out of his mind. I've been actually rewatching Parks and Recreation and Everybody Loves Raymond. Because those...
Everybody Loves Raymond comes up from time to time. This is LaJuan mainly, because I'm not a big sitcom person, but I've been kind of hoodwinked into sitting there and watching this stuff, and I laugh. She's also big on Boondocks, South Park. You know,
South Park is a joy forever, but for some reason, at a certain point, it just dropped out of the conversation. They're still doing them. That's been running since like 1926. But,
yeah.
they doesn't. Boondocks, I must admit, and this is, an unpopular take, and no offense to Lawan, I didn't like Aaron McGruder's attitude. I got tired of that constant frown. And I don't like that Uncle Ruckus is, the sort of person who at that time I was often called. I was told, and I don't know if this is true, but somebody told me that at a bookstore talk, Aaron McGruder said that Uncle Ruckus was based partly on me. I'll bet that's not true, but still, I don't like that.
I think you flatter yourself.
I doubt
Look
it.
at me, man.
I mean,
I
would
even
make more
look like
sense.
the dude,
You too. But no, everybody on it, it's just the frown. And then talk about me, the one that is me, although I don't think he was thinking about me, is the uptight black guy who's about my color and of course has the white wife, and he's, kind of this inauthentic, corny guy. And I just thought Aaron McGruder clearly doesn't like me, but in two ways. And everybody's always frowning. And so I never quite got into it. I watched a season of it though.
You mentioned the Free Press, Barry Weiss, and I just read Douglas Murray's most recent, Things Worth Remembering. He has a column at the magazine.
I haven't read it yet this week. Yeah.
It's on Nixon's concession to Kennedy in 1960 as a model of civic-minded political contestation, where that election might have been stolen from Richard Nixon by Richard J. Daley and some shenanigans in Texas, because both Illinois and Texas went to Kennedy by very, very small, 10,000 votes or something crazy like that. And Richard J. Daley was fully capable of manufacturing 10,000 votes if he needed them, kind of thing like that. And it was a tribute to Nixon's integrity and put forward as a model for what a losing candidate should do under such circumstances for the sake of the country. So, closing this out here, I just want to say I fully endorse the spirit of Douglas Murray's contribution in that regard. And my great concern, I don't know if you ever watched Secession, the rave TV show. Yep. So the episode where there's an election, it's closely fought, and a warehouse containing ballots in Milwaukee, Wisconsin catches on fire, and that throws everything into disarray, and it gives a lot of space for demagogues and unscrupulous people to foment unrest and distrust. We can't have that. We're already on pins and needles. We're already at each other's throats. There was an attempt to assassinate, more than one attempt to assassinate one of the candidates. And we can't have that. So I'm trying to invoke the spirit of the late, great Richard Nixon and commend it to the attention of both sides in this contest.
I know you're trying to close out, but what do you mean late, great? And I know there were good things about him, but really?
Yeah. I think, even Douglas Murray, in his effort to praise him, says his conduct in office wasn't entirely exemplary. And I agree with that. Of course, I agree with that. But I think Nixon was a very formidable occupant of that office. And, there's a long list of stuff that he accomplished that one could go down that make him an historic figure. Of course, he was also presiding over, the most corrupt administration in American history. And I think that has to be noted. That doesn't mean he's not great. No, never mind. No, you can be great and still be, flawed and fundamentally flawed.
There was much to admire about the man, and he got waylaid by, the ridiculous nastiness of Watergate, kind of like LBJ. The Great Society was fantastic, and then he gets waylaid by the Vietnam War. Again, I know what you mean by late great, but I just wanted to get a sense of what you meant, and especially given that we're thinking about the idea of someone saying in 50 years that Donald Trump is the late great. That's going to be an interesting analysis, but I get what you mean.
If he wins, I think it'll come to pass.
I'll try to wrap my head around that.
We have ample opportunity to commiserate to that effect should he win. And if he loses, well, he's history. And we can commiserate about that as well.
That's right.
All right, John. Thanks a lot. We'll talk again in a couple of weeks.
Have a good one, Glenn.
You too.